On this very place, Gavrilo Princip stood when he assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand on the 28th of June 1914. This was the direct cause for World War I. But how exactly did this assassination happen? That is what you're going to find out in this video. When we study the outbreak of the First World War, we can distinguish underlying causes and the direct cause. The underlying causes of the First World War are well known: nationalism, imperialism, militarism, the arms race, the rise of Germany as a military and industrial power, and the alliances. Now, the direct cause for the outbreak of the First World War was the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by Gavrilo Princip. So who was Franz Ferdinand and why did Princip want him dead? Archduke Franz Ferdinand was born in 1863. He was an avid hunter and eventually became next in line for the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He wasn't well liked in the upper classes. He hated the Hungarians and saw the Serbs as subhuman. He was strongly Catholic, did not like the Jews because of cultural reasons, but he did like his wife, Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, a Bohemian aristocrat. So who was Gavrilo Princip? Now, he was a member of the Young Bosnians, a group of radicalized Serbs. They believed Bosnia should not be part of the Austro-Hungarian and would prefer unification with Serbia. See, Bosnia and Herzegovina fell under Austro-Hungarian rule in 1878. Annexation occurred in 1908. Not too long ago, Princip and others, they plotted to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand in March 1914, when it was announced he would visit the capital city of Bosnia, Sarajevo. In May, he and two other associates went to Belgrade, Serbia, where they were handed pistols and bombs to carry out the attack. These were given by the Black Hand, a secret military society in Serbia with similar ideas as Young Bosnia. After this, they went to Sarajevo to plan the attack. Now, Austrian officials, they had picked an inconvenient date for the visit of the Archduke. On this day, St. Vitus Day, in the year 1389, Ottoman forces had destroyed a Serb-led army on the field of Blackbirds in Kosovo, putting an end to the era of Serb empire in the Balkans and creating the preconditions for the late integration of what remained of Serbia into the Ottoman Empire. For Serb ultra-nationalists, both in Serbia itself and across the Serbian irredentist network in Bosnia, the arrival of the heir apparent in Sarajevo on this of all days was a symbolic affront that demanded a response. And then the day came that Franz Ferdinand and his wife visited Sarajevo. It was June 28th, 1914. They would drive a route that was predictable in an open car, despite warnings that a terrorist outrage was likely. No less than 7 terrorists armed themselves and positioned themselves along the quay. They positioned themselves in intervals along the quay, so if one failed to act, another one could take his place. Armed with small bombs, with detonator caps and 12-second chemical fuses, as well as revolvers, they ensured themselves of success. And despite all the warnings for the authorities, there was a low level of security. The journey began. Muhammad Mehmet Basic, who identified as a Serb Muslim, was the first to strike at the Čumarija bridge, yet he failed to act. The second attacker was a Bosnian Serb, Nedeljko Čabrinović, was the first to come into action. He threw the bomb, which missed, fell on the ground and exploded beneath the car behind the Archduke's car. Several officers got wounded, as well as a number of bystanders. With a cyanide capsule, he tried to kill himself, as well as jumping in the river. Yet the poison did not work and the river was too low to drown him. He was quickly captured. Franz Ferdinand, he made it to the town hall. He felt sorry for the people that got wounded. He wanted to pay them a visit in the hospital. So they drove along the Applecade, where the assassins were still waiting at their posts. Yet, young and inexperienced as they were, 3 of them failed to come into action, as one of them later confessed. I did not pull out the revolver because I saw that the Duchess was there. I felt sorry for her. They drove back through the city, but the driver was not informed about the change of itinerary, so he drove into the Franz Josef Street, and it was made clear he had taken a wrong turn. But the car had no reverse, so he had to get out of the car and pull the car back. And that is where Gavrilo Princip, on that very spot right there, was standing. He approached the car, took his pistol, and fired 2 shots at point-blank range. Time, as we know from Princip's later testimony, seemed to slow as he left the shade of the shop awnings to take aim. The sight of the Duchess gave him a momentary pause. As I saw that the lady was sitting next to him, I reflected for a moment whether to shoot or not. At the same time, I was filled with a peculiar feeling. At first, it seemed that the gunman had missed his mark, as Franz Ferdinand and Sophie were sitting motionless in the car. But he had both hit them, and they were both dying. As the car drove off, Sophie died in Franz Ferdinand's hands as he shouted to her, "Sophie, Sophie, don't die! Stay alive for our children!" Sophie died and Franz Ferdinand died shortly after. Gavrilo Princip was beaten to the ground by a crowd, and if the police would not have intervened, he would have been lynched on the spot. What followed was the July crisis. Austro-Hungary saw the assassination as an opportunity to deal with the perceived threat of Serbian nationalism and issued an ultimatum to Serbia on July 23, 1914. The ultimatum contained a list of demands, including allowing Austro-Hungarian officials to investigate the crime on Serbian soil. Serbia agreed to most demands, but not all, leading to tensions between the two nations. Frustrated by Serbia's response, Austro-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. This act of aggression sparked a regional conflict in the Balkans. As Austro-Hungary mobilized its forces against Serbia, a complex network of alliances among European powers came into play. Germany, bound by a defensive alliance with Austro-Hungary, offered its support, known as the blank check. Russia, a Slavic ally of Serbia, began mobilizing its army in response. Germany then declared war on Russia on August 1st. The declaration of war by Germany on Russia set off a chain reaction of mobilizations and declarations. Russia's allies, France and Great Britain, were drawn into the conflict, and so was the Ottoman Empire that later would join the Central Powers. So what happened to Gavrilo Princip? Being too young to receive the death penalty, he was put in prison. It turned out he had killed the wrong guy. Despite Franz Ferdinand being anti-Serbian and all, he wanted to avoid war with Russia and thus did not want war with Serbia either. But war came, and eventually Serbia was overrun by the Central Powers. A big part of the Serbian population did not survive the conflict. Princip was horrified by the outcome of his action and was destroyed by the news. He would not live to see the end of the conflict because he died in prison in April 1918. He comforted himself with the idea that World War I would have broken out sooner or later, regardless of his action. This is true, but the immediate trigger to World War I was pulled right here on this very spot. I would love to visit these historical places on location. If you want to support me, you can do so via Patreon, PayPal, or via a super thanks. Information can be found below the video. If you want to learn about the deeper lying causes of World War I, click right here. I want to thank you for watching and best wishes from Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina.